And our first panel of the day will be about esports. Yes, something that I know intrigues many of you. The champion of disruption, and it's going to be powered by our friends at Asia Sports Tech. We're going to do this by welcoming everyone as individually, so we can, if you get kind of a virtual applause for everybody, really get psyched up. So to welcome to our virtual stage to moderate the discussion, a sports innovation consultant at Mottaz Consulting. Please welcome Stephane Mottaz.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Sport Tech Nation 2020 for this unique session and first session on eSport, champion of disruption. I'm your host today, Stephane Mottaz. The session is powered by Asia Sports Tech. And without further ado, because we have a great panelist and eSport expert today on board, I would like to have a round table, quickly starting with Joanna Cheung from Asia Sports Tech. Hi, Joanna.
Hi, everyone. My name is Joanna. Thank you for having me. It's such a privilege to be here.
Thank you. We also have Brett Diamond, COO at the Minnesota Rockers. Hi, Brett.
Good morning. Good to be here.
Welcome on board. And we also have the privilege to get Julian Tan from Formula One on board.
Hi, Stefan. Hi, everybody. It's a real pleasure to be here today.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for this great panel today. As I said, we have the privilege to launch this session. So let's start without further ado with Joanna, maybe. I would like to ask you one first question, Joanna. Based in Asia and China, how would you describe the eSport ecosystem in the region in 2020?
Yes, it's a very exciting question. I mean, because China is just like growing in such exponential rate. And, you know, the market like in terms of the size of like eSport users, like, you know, the global is about 500 million users, and in China it's about 400 million of them. So it's like a huge size, and you know, the whole ecosystem has already been set up by companies front runners like Tencent and Alibaba, and we also have like companies who are in the e-commerce side or the commerce side, you know, brick and mortar store like Suning. They really get in the game, you know, they have their own team, and then they cross promote it with their sports team. So it's a lot going on. But I would say like the most important thing is because like from the government standpoint and then for technology standpoint, because the government is really behind it, promoting it, subsidizing it, making it making eSport a professional sports, you know, as in part of the overall sports in China. And also technology with 5G coming in, we're expecting about 25 to 50% of the interactivity will be coming in from eSports. So there's a lot of activity going on in that area, coming in from, you know, the government, the technology, and obviously the market is ready with so many users are here. And a lot of them, like, you know, are from Gen Z. So, like, you know, it's just a lot of consumption being expected in this area.
Excellent. It's a real mature ecosystem in Asia and China. Brett, how would you qualify the esport development in North America and USA in 2020?
Apologies, I have myself muted. Well, it's certainly growing, and you know, our organization is excited to be a part of the Call of Duty League with Minnesota Rocker and Rocket League Championship Series with version 1, which we just got into a few months ago. But the esports ecosystem in the US and North America is clearly growing very quickly. We've seen significant strides for the leagues that we are in, as well as just the overall ecosystem. And it's clear that, you know, when we think about it, it's a key part of the future of sports and entertainment, both in the next few years and then long term, which is really the way we think about it on an organizational level.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Brett. Julian, I have a quick question to you, actually. you are the international brand here, and I would like to know if you have more a global strategy, knowing the difference region per region, or you have more regional strategy for esports at Formula One?
Yeah, it's a bit of both. We're obviously a global sport, but having said that, a lot of our activities are real world races. They are local races. It's a bit of both when it comes to figuring out the best way to scale. As it relates to esports specifically, we've got a global championship in the F1 Esports Series that has been running for, this is our fourth edition so far, our fourth year so far, and it's growing at an incredible rate, to be honest, in terms of participation and viewership. And I think that we are also identifying that actually esports does play a really powerful role in terms of localizing content and also taking a more localized or regionalized approach. So an example of this is last year, we launched our first ever regional championship in collaboration with Justin Telesports in Shanghai and China to run our Formula One Esports Series China Championship, where to complement the global championship that we were having in esports, we also had a dedicated tournament in China, really premised around finding the fastest Chinese drivers in the region who can then graduate into becoming Formula One stars, Formula One esports stars. So for us, I think the role that esports plays, obviously there is an entertainment role, there is a wider engagement role, but actually what we found as a brand where our main product is the real life racing, we found great success in seeing how esports can actually transcend that chasm between real and virtual worlds in order to help us serve our wider company needs, whether that is in terms of reaching out to a younger audience or building our pipeline of new fans into the sport, or indeed just giving more touch points for our fans globally, but also on a regional level to engage with Formula One in a more immersive and experiential way because of the way our esports is set up.
Thank you, Julian. Thank you very much. Very interesting. Brett, maybe one question to you about the future. What's to be expected in the future? Let's say 3 to 5 years in your region in terms of development and so on, and the current and the future trend. How do you see that?
Yeah, well, particularly when we look at that 3 to 5 year period, for us, we're an organization that is about 18 months old, and what we're seeing with so the league that we're in with Activision Blizzard Call of Duty League is a regional local based format, right? So we are the Minnesota Rocker. We are based in Minnesota. Both Call of Duty League and Overwatch League have taken that approach, which is different than what other esports leagues have taken. And so for us, particularly with the Rocker brand, we are focused on building a localized fan base. So, appealing to fans in Minnesota and the broader region. And we certainly have aspirations to establish a national fan base and an international fan base. But what we're seeing in terms of audience size, I would say we're generally competing with, you would probably put our league in probably the 6th or 7th biggest sport in the United States. And what you want to see is that grow over time, right? And the way I sort of think about it, and the way we think about it, is similar to one of the projects that I was involved. I worked for the National Football League, American football, previously, and was involved in some of our international games in London at Wembley Stadium. And the guys back then doing like the big picture strategy thinking talked a lot about, at the time, I probably won't get these numbers right, but American football was probably the 14th or 15th biggest sport in the UK at that point. And the goal was to continually level that up over time to the point where you are a top 5 sport. And that's how we would view our progression over time for esports, both in our market locally as well as in the country and and internationally as a whole. And I think we're seeing progress towards that, even week to week or month to month, the way our fan base is growing and the way fans are responding to the product.
Thank you, Brett. That's excellent that you can already compare your experience in sport and esport as an expert. I would like to ask the similar question to Joanna. Actually, what's to be expected in the next 3 to 5 years in your region? Because you are based in a actually already pretty mature region when it comes to esport. How do you see that evolving?
Yeah, well, definitely see a lot more growth and activity going on with, like, as I mentioned, you know, with like a 5G technology pushing out. So it's between console, PC, and mobile, there's going to be a lot more like esports activities and games and users and viewers going on. And also with live streaming numbers, because like in China, just like, you know, the media space has been growing incredibly, with everyone really spending so much time on it, and all the platforms are trying to fight eyeball time, you know, from the viewers. And in terms of like not just the length of time, but the quality of it as well. So like, you know, you can see lately, you can see a lot of virtual icons are being used, like, you know, to assimilate, you know, real life event. That has already been started to use several years ago in League of Legends World Champions. Then you can see they have virtual icons coming on in the live show with real world musicians on the same stage. So that kind of new content creation, and not just making it esports, but esports is like sports in the past. It's like moving, like, you know, from the esports or sports itself towards entertainment. So it's really merging with entertainment. We see a lot of like crossover between entertainment celebrities and esports, you know, people like are playing together, because like a lot of these games, like they have the community is really tight, and the esports players come out and talk to their fans a lot. So we do see a lot of community with the players and with the celebrities, you know, all bundled into one. And then also from the media perspective, they are going to have a lot more creativity. And then the length of the programming is just like incredible. It's so long, and they have like a lot of possibility to customize it as well. And I also definitely see the trend of more traditional companies, how they are going to use esports to not just to market themselves, but really to push products like Suning, who I mentioned, who have like, you know, 4 different sports clubs. They have football, they men's football, you know, Inter Milan that everyone know about, and women's football in China, and now esports team that is doing super well. So we see a lot of activities, how it's been being such a good core engine to help them to drive sales on the e-commerce platform and really owning the space of the Gen Z. So definitely see a lot more activities going on into all of those spaces.
Excellent. Thank you, Joanna. We also understand that there is many bridges to come when it's related to esports, sport, celebrities, entertainment, media. I would like to ask a question to Julian. Any bridges that you plan to continue to develop, for instance, between the traditional racing and the sim racing, the simulated sport?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I think that is where, you know, particularly Formula One esports sits just really very uniquely positioned between that intersection of esports and real life sport. You know, I think a great example of the efforts that we're making in this space is really what happened over lockdown, when at the peak of COVID-19 earlier this year, when pretty much all of live sport had to go dark because of COVID-19. And we as a sport also had to go dark. So our real life races were either canceled or were postponed. And we moved very quickly to develop what we called the virtual Grand Prix, where we replaced our real life Grand Prix with virtual versions on our official Formula One video game, and had our Formula One drivers participate. And the positioning of that product obviously was a little bit different from what I would call the traditional esports product, where you're having, you know, esports professionals playing the video game. In our case, you know, these were real life Formula One drivers playing the video game. But the beauty of where we sit as sort of in that intersection between the real world and the virtual world basically meant that our real life Formula One drivers picked up the game very, very easily, because the fact that in our esports, you actually compete with a wheel and a pedal and a simulator. It's a gaming setup, but it's a wheel and a pedal and a simulator. And it's very different from, say, if you were to play other games where you're maybe using a keypad, a keyboard, or, you know, a controller. It's a very different experience. For us, it's a very immersive one, and it enables us to blur those lines, right, between the virtual racing and the real world racing. So we were able to have our real life Formula One drivers, you know, past and present, new talent come in, pick up the video game, perform extremely well on the video game, pick it up really, really quickly, and put on a great spectacle for fans. So we were able to continue to race. We continued racing at a time that we couldn't get our cars on track. And we were able to continue to deliver racing entertainment to our fans, and also continue to, you know, deliver value to our sponsors, you know, deliver live sports content to our broadcast partners. And I think for me that is really it's really the tip of the iceberg, right, in terms of how we think about using esports and video gaming, particularly for a sport like ours, where we're not a really accessible sport in the same way as, say, basketball or football is, where you can, you know, pick up the equipment and play with your friends, you know, in a local court or local park. You can't just jump into an F1 car. So we have those fundamental barriers to participation, barriers to engagement, but gaming and esports really helps us break down those barriers. And I think it's just sort of thinking out of the box a little bit on how we can use the activation of our gaming portfolio together with our partners at Codemasters, Gfinity, to turn the model on its head and continue to deliver new and innovative entertainment through racing and through esports that, you know, can not only help get the younger generation to engage, but also provide another touch point, supplementary racing content for our existing F1 fans as well. I think as the years come, you know, as we explore the next sort of short, medium, and long term, I think esports continues to be a real opportunity area for us, to almost be creative in the way of how we would think about engaging our audiences, because it provides such an immersive way to engage with what is fundamentally a less accessible sport.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Julian. I would like to give a little bit of the perspective and ask you to you all, actually, what's your view on the team's valuation at the moment? Because we've seen great figures like 300 million for a team, and I would like you, if possible, to give your opinion on the team valuation at the moment versus the current revenues of those teams. What's going on in esports at the moment? Brett, maybe you can give us your perspective on this.
Yeah, well, I'll say, you know, I've always enjoyed reading the stories, and there was one that came out in Forbes recently that you're probably referencing about esports team valuations, and those are always interesting stories to read. You know, it's hard to know exactly where they're getting their numbers from, because while there are a few organizations that publicly disclose revenue and that sort of thing, most do not. I'll say from our organization's perspective, you know, we're fortunate in that we're owned by primarily one ownership family, the Wilf family, who also owns the Minnesota Vikings, as well as Gary Vaynerchuk, who is a minority investor in our group. So we're a little bit unique in that we're not an organization that is looking for our next round of fundraising, and that's not the perspective we're taking. So we're not significantly impacted by short-term valuations, right? The way our ownership group looks at this is truly through a long-term lens. And you asked the 3 to 5 year question a few minutes ago, but for us, this is a 10-year, 20-year plus perspective that we look at it through. And, you know, the National Football League, American football, just celebrated their 100th season last year. So, you know, we look at it through a similar lens of where will this league, where will the esports ecosystem be very far down the road. You know, to your specific question, because I don't want to sound like I'm dodging it, you know, it's a little bit hard to tell exactly where those numbers come from. And I certainly, you know, without looking at another organization's numbers, don't want to try to peel back the layers hypothetically. But for us, these are all long-term plays, right? Like we'll have we could have a meeting with a brand partner this week who we don't necessarily think is going to be a sponsor of our organization in 2021 because it might not be the right time for them, but we might be thinking about this as somebody that will be interested in esports in 2022 or 2023 or 2024. Just my personal opinion, when we look at that 5-year time frame from a sponsorship perspective, 5 years from now, I believe every brand with a significant marketing budget will be considering esports and gaming broadly as part of their marketing mix. Doesn't mean everybody's going to spend in those categories, right? Just like not every brand spends on traditional sports, but generally, if you have a big budget to spend, you're considering a traditional sports partnership currently, at least to take a look at it. And that's where the esports ecosystem will be a few years from now. So, there are some, to get back to your point, there are some organizations that, that are looking for their next round of fundraising or are thinking about what's our valuation, next month. We're in a unique position where, where we're less concerned with the month to month valuations, but more looking at, how do we continue to build our brands and our trajectory and our fan base long term.
Thank you very much. I would like to ask the same question to Joanna, who's used to work with different teams, actually. So you may have a slightly different perspective on this one, and also how those esports teams plan to monetize further in the future.
Thank you. Yeah, so we do work with quite a few like esports team in the region and also outside of Asia, to help them with their market entry, to help them with their strategy in the region and fundraising. But I do, because like the market is moving so fast, I think it really depends on the owner's perspective and the vision of what they want to be and who they want to be and why they're doing esports. Are they just jumping on the bandwagon because it's a cool thing to do? Because just like, how movie was, like everyone wanted to invest a piece in movie making business a few years ago? Or is it something that like they have a strategic approach? And to be honest, some of these companies, when they first started, they didn't really think that long. I know I was using Suning like as an example before, but just like, really like them 2-3 years ago, they were not really thinking about like how big they will grow. It's just like a, part of a business they acquire. They think like, okay, this is really interesting. They want to move into it. So I would really love to see, just like wait and see like, how 5G plans out, what kind of technology can plug in, and whether a team has capability to do to have more revenue stream, like merchandise, because that's heavily underdeveloped here right now, like among esports. And I think that is one of the really big potential area to grow. And media, what can we do with media? And have we exploited, all commercial possibilities, like the female, the female category that has traditionally been quite shy away from a lot of like sports sponsorship comparatively, but then they have been taking a more active role in esports. Like Mac has been doing a lot of sponsorship in the esports world and doing a lot of makeup, and then that is really resonating with a lot of early adopters or female adopters. I think those are fascinating trends, and without having a long history of where those came from, I think it is like, in terms of valuation, it really needs to put everything in the mix. And like what Brent said, like, how many years of a vision that they have? Is it short term or long term? Because every person and every investor is different. But we are definitely talking to them about that. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I think there is also a lot of things that the traditional sport industry can learn from esport at the moment, and see if the fan of esport are the same or acting is the same way as the fan of the traditional sport. I would like to ask you just one question, maybe to Julian. Who is your champion in terms of disruption within your ecosystem? Just quickly, to finish on this.
I think what's really fascinating in esports is the blurring of lines between the entertainment sectors, the entertainment verticals. A brilliant example is A couple of months ago, Fortnite held a Travis Scott concert within the game itself. I think that that trend of redefining how you consume entertainment and what entertainment is actually really fascinating, and one that we'll see continue to develop in the years to come.
Excellent. Thank you. I think we have made already a large presentation on the esport trend for today and tomorrow's, and get your expertise on board was an amazing experience. I'm really happy to say that. And I pass the floor to Josh and take the opportunity to thank you all, you guys, and also Colosseum for this experience.
Thank you, Stephane. Yes, what a wonderful way to kick off the day. Esports, a true disruptor, especially as the panelists were saying, to traditional, what we think as traditional sports. So thank you again, Stephane, and to Julian and Joanna and Brett. Thank you so much for being a part of our opening panel.